Hi guys, my name is Vanessa Smedley and I'm a painter. We are entering spooky season once more, so I thought it would be fun to wax a little bit Edgar Allan Poe and paint this nice little raven right here. And we are going to paint it on black watercolor paper again because I think that's a lot of fun for Halloween. So let's do this! Here are the materials for today, and normally for metallic watercolor I would use my Cotman and Paul Rubens sets, but today I'm going to give these Kuretake ones a try, and I have the gem set and the pearl set. So I have my drawing here all ready for me, and if you use graphite pencil you should be able to see it just fine on that black paper, no big deal. I'm not going to show you my mixing of the paints this time because with these metallic ones, I really have not mixed any colors together. I just mix a whole lot of water in them at first. So that's what I've done here with the gem violet from the gem set, and I've put a ton of water in it, and I'm just using that to define some of these areas that are more purpley. And if you're wondering how I know what color to put where, well, if you look at the original photo, you can actually see hints and tints of these colors that I'm using. But if that's not obvious enough for you, you can take it into Photoshop or some kind of application like that, and you can intensify the color saturation, and it will kind of show you what to do. That would look something like this. So here I'm actually painting this in real time for you so that you can see exactly how long it takes me for each brush stroke. Sometimes with it sped up like that, you can get the impression that I paint way faster than I do, but I definitely do not. And so we've got a ton of water in this paint. This is the violet color, and I'm just adding this in and basically just giving it a tint of purple at this point. So for now, I'm adding this very, very watery purple color for wherever I want it to be tinted purple. And later I'll come back in with more and more pigment in the areas that I want it to be lighter. Because using this black watercolor paper, it basically works in the complete opposite way as normal watercolor. Normally in watercolor, we work from light to dark, adding more and more pigment to make things darker. But with this black paper, we work from dark to light. And so we add very, very little pigment to start with and more as we want things to be lighter. It takes a definite amount of mental adjustment if you've not worked in anything like acrylic for a while. If you've been working in watercolor for a while, you're going to have to think about it for sure. Now up underneath the chin is where some of this ambient lighting is coming from. So I'm actually using gem pink, and I'm watering that down just as watery as I did my purple, and I'm adding that here under his chin and under the beak. Now here is where I start adding a little bit more pigment into my water. Not just a ton, but more. And I'm using the gem blue for this because the blue is kind of the dominant color in this entire bird here. So we're just adding some more pigment, and then we're adding in some of the highlights on the back of his head and continuing on from there. It's time for fun facts about ravens. And ravens are known as very intelligent birds and will in fact use tools to obtain food. The BBC says that there's actually video evidence that has shown them to strip a twig of its bark and then fashion a hook and use that hook to get hard to reach food out of crevices. I mean, that's pretty intelligent for a bird, I would think. The BBC also says that they've been shown to understand water displacement. So if you put a treat at the bottom of a vase that has water in it, they will add items into the vase to get the treat up to the level where they can reach the treat. I mean, come on now. And here's where I'm going to add in a bunch of these feathers on his neck, and I'm skipping black spaces in between. That's going to be more of a shadowy area in between the feathers, and I'm trying not to like just go overboard with detail. I'm kind of just painting in general feather-like shapes. I'm not making sure every single feather is exactly like it is in the reference photo or anything like that, just more of a general sense of what's going on. And down here, I'm just painting right over the top of the purple that I laid down earlier, and it's just going to end up blending into a nice, lovely kind of purplish, bluish color. For the beak, I'm going to start out with a nice base of the gem blue, and then on top of that, I'm going to come back in with the pearl cobalt blue from the pearl set, and then I'm going to add some of the highlights to the beak on top of the blue that I've already laid down. And I'm making sure to paint around the crack between his beak because that is all black. And you really don't want to use masking fluid or anything like that on this paper. This black paper is very, very fragile, and masking fluid will just rip up an entire layer of your paper. So try to paint around anything black. However, if you do end up getting some paint on the area that you meant to leave black, this metallic paint is very, very easy to lift. So you can come back in with some clean water, scrub it a little bit, and lift it. And that is good news. I'm just going to continue going around with my lightest color and add the highlights that I want with the pearl cobalt blue. I mean, it's no secret that Edgar Allan Poe is probably responsible for a lot of the kind of mystique and around like the spooky aspect of a raven, but I found it hilarious that apparently right after he published the poem, it became so popular that children would follow him through the streets, flapping their arms and croaking like ravens, and Poe's response would be to shout nevermore at them, which I think is hilarious, but maybe that's just me. This gem pink color is very, very bright and draws a lot of attention, and it's very, very punchy of a color. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in some more of that just for little pops of color here and there, just to bring up the drama a bit. Definitely adding some more under his beak to draw more attention to that area, and then I'll be adding some more feathers underneath his chin as well with this nice bright pink. For his eye, we've got some really watery blue for the top, we've got some really watery purple for the bottom, and then I'm going to add in some highlights once that dries. accidentally painted over my little black crack in an area or two, so I'm going to come back in with my tiny little chisel blender. It's damp, and I'm just going to run that along that little crack there and dab it out with a shop towel, and see, good as new. That stuff comes up really easily. For the highlight of the eye, I'm just adding in some of that pearl blue in the tiny little highlights on the edge, and then we're going to add some more highlights with the pink. Another random thing about ravens is that they have been observed to be very, very playful birds as well. People have seen them playing tag, playing hide and seek, and even catching sticks when other birds throw them. They've also been shown sliding down snowbanks on their backs, having fun. Basically like a sled, I guess. And here's where I add more of that pink highlight underneath his chin, just adding in a few feather shapes. Okay, taking a step back from this, I'm realizing that as bright as I have made all those feathers on his neck is kind of drawing too much attention to that area and not to his face and his head. So I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to wet that area a bit, and I'm going to dab out with a shop towel some of that color so that I can make it not quite as intense, and that way it shouldn't draw quite as much focus to it. I still think there's quite a bit of focus on just that neck fluff area, so I'm going to come back in and I'm going to add some more pigment to the blue areas and the top of his head to see if I can draw some more cohesion from that. I think some of my black gaps between the feathers are a little bit too dramatic, so I'm going to come back in with some nice watery blue and fill in a few of those little gaps. And now I'm waffling back and forth again because now I think his head is a little bit too light. So I'm bringing in some water and I am lifting a little bit of that color that I just added in there, a little bit here and there to bring it back down to somewhere in the middle ground here. I don't want it too dark, but I don't want it too light either. So we're working on that right now. And I think that will do it. Now, as I've got all this tape on here, I do want to make note, this is what happens when you take the tape off. You can see that all that black comes off on the tape and it makes kind of a rough patch around the edges where the tape was. But it does dry really flat, like probably flatter than any paper I've ever tried. And here's the finished product with all the tape removed and dried and stuff. And I will say that these Kuretake paints are actually really nice. They have a lot of really nice saturated color, which sometimes can be difficult with the metallics. And I would say too that sometimes they're a little bit splotchy if you're not watching your water application, but otherwise they're pretty good. And sometimes when I do a metallic painting, I just like to show you the angles, the different angles that you can see it in and how the paint changes. I mean, when it's kind of laying flat, you see it very bright. When you bring it up straight, like it would be in a frame, it's a lot more subtle. And there you have it, a nice little raven to celebrate the spooky season. And now you'll have to paint that nevermore. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all of that fun stuff, because that's how this channel gets to grow. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in 2 weeks.